Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the irony of having internet difficulties during this hearing, but thank you for holding it. And as we've heard from Secretary Moniz today, modernizing the energy infrastructure is a vast undertaking that includes expanding and upgrading long-distance high-voltage transmission systems, building out CO2 pipelines and hubs for CO2 storage, scaling up hydrogen technologies for use in transportation and power generation, rolling out EV stations, decarbonizing natural gas systems. The LIFT Act and its companion Clean Future Act takes significant steps to address these critical infrastructure challenges, and I'm gratified that part of that discussion has been based on the Power On Act that we drafted to develop a interstate high voltage macro grid. Secretary Moniz, you have discussed the concept of collecting energy infrastructure around hubs. And I believe this, I was actually talking this week about the concept with Peter Fox-Penner of Boston College, who I believe works with you. The notion involves integrating the various energy systems. A 2021 National Academy of Sciences report concluded that building a national hydrogen pipeline network will play an essential role in meeting a zero emissions target by 2050. And in appropriations, we've supported for hydrogen, we've provided support for hydrogen pipeline research at DOE. But could you explain a little bit more about how the energy infrastructure hubs might work and how that might look to lay people like us, and specifically about co-locating hydrogen and CCUS hubs and how that might accelerate the hydrogen economy?
Yes, thank you, Congressman Peters. Am I on mute? No, I'm okay. In fact, let me start by saying that one of the studies we did was specifically for California CCS, and what it showed there were about 3 natural hubs in the state where you could really focus on the infrastructure in those hubs without having to worry about, at least initially, a macro infrastructure cutting across everything. And of course, it's not only carbon dioxide, but if you look at like one of those hubs involved the Long Beach port, and clearly using hydrogen in that port, electrifying the port would be a tremendous step forward. So really a comprehensive hub of that type. As we looked around the country, and that was the figure in the written testimony, looked around the country, we saw similar kind of accumulations of large industrial activities with the opportunities for sequestration, with the opportunities for supplying hydrogen to those industrial facilities, possibly to the power facilities, and utilizing to the extent possible. That's where, by the way, your support for research on hydrogen pipelines is really important, because the extent to which you can have perhaps pipeline structures that could employ at different times, of course, CO2 and then hydrogen could be a very, very efficient way of doing the infrastructure evolution. So,
Secretary, do you have a sense that the bill before us will adequately accommodate and promote the development of energy infrastructure hubs, as you imagine, or should we make changes and amendments to it?
I think it could be strengthened. I think it's an important organizational concept, and as I said earlier, one way would be also to focus on a federal program to, in some cost-shared way, develop 2 or 3 at least of these regional hubs, certainly in this decade, and that would, doing by example would be a tremendous way for the committee and the Congress to get this kicked off.
As I said earlier, we'd like to follow up with you and your organization offline to sort of come up with some of those ideas. We can offer it up to the committee. Also, I just wanted to comment too, real quickly, on methane emissions strategy. The EU Commission wants to obtain substantial reductions by 2030. And it's interesting that the French government blocked the domestic company from signing a $7 billion contract for liquid LNG from a facility in Brownsville, Texas, because U.S. natural gas was too dirty. So there's an economic incentive to deal with this. Could you elaborate on what kind of future policy and regulations you have in mind for managing emissions from the natural gas system?
Well, first of all, I think the industry has got to be full in on getting methane reduced. But there are also new technology. For example, you can do electric drilling. That's being advanced. So we think, for example, on LNG specifically, and I was part of a project that was looking at the architecture. We think that you could do a net zero LNG facility from wellhead to dock, for example. These are the kinds of initiatives that we need. The LNG exports, I think, remain very critical for our allies. And so I think going domestically to net zero would be a very, very good move.
Well, we'll look forward to discuss that more, but my time has expired. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.